Now, in New Jersey, the Democratic candidate for governor is Mikey Sherrill as the Democrat and is running against the GOP nominee named Jack Ciattarelli. The race is one of the most contested governor races in the country, aiming for an election this November, as typically a Democratic stronghold New Jersey is. The race is almost a toss-up at this point, with a lot at stake politically in New Jersey. However, politics will always prevail, unfortunately, especially when there's a lot at stake, because recently, the National Archives released Mikey Sherrill's military records without her consent, including her social security number and date of birth, to a, quote, unauthorized requester. The National Personal Records Center director, Scott Levens, stated to Sherrill, "On behalf of the National Archives, I sincerely apologize for the inconvenience and aggravation this situation may cause you and for our failure to safeguard your military record from unauthorized release." And continuing the apology, the center offered Sherrill, quote unquote, free credit monitoring services. Free credit monitoring services. They literally gave very sensitive information to her political opponent during one of the most highly contested elections of this year, especially for a governorship, and could possibly swing it to the opposing political party, who hasn't been in power in like 10 to 15 years since Chris Christie. And their solution is, we can give you free credit monitoring services. You can't make that up. And this is just as bad as you can get in politics. A government-run office releasing a candidate's personal information in order to favor a political candidate. It's not just one party doing it to the other either. This is really probably somebody in the GOP having a connection into someone in that office who thinks that they're invincible and then that they're not going to get caught by releasing this information. Sherrill said, in quote, "This is an illegal and dangerous weaponization of the federal government, that Jack Ciattarelli and the Trump administration are breaking the law and exposing private records for political gain, and is a violation of anyone who has ever served. No veteran's record is safe." And I have to say, I'm not surprised by any means on this, because this is obviously, and I say so obviously, not the first time, nor the last time a government entity released private information on their opposing political candidate, who is typically just an American citizen at the time when it's released. It's just another jab, really, in dismantling the entire system that is there to protect everybody, just slowly becoming undone for political purposes, really. I could obviously see Ciattarelli's campaign having something to do with this. I mean, that would be the very obvious conclusion there, which everyone refers to as opposition research, which is one of the nastiest and dirtiest tactics in politics that takes place, and when you're on the losing side of research being made public, you yell as loud as you can, and if it's your own campaign that receives the research on your opponent, you just stay quiet and don't say anything, and then use that information to your advantage. It's just like the definition of hypocrisy there. If the roles were reversed and she received information on Ciattarelli's campaign, it would just be the exact opposite. Ciattarelli would be screaming. She would be using that research to her own advantage. And this isn't anything new. Recent years, this is just increasing exponentially. I think the largest example of this is Trump himself has had his own tax returns leaked twice, one to the New York Times and Rachel Maddow, and one to Rachel Maddow's show as well on MSNBC, which were both done by the IRS. His presidential phone calls were leaked. When Biden raided Mar-a-Lago, federal agents leaked that information collected in the raid, along with audio recordings. And even FBI Director Comey admitted that in 2017, he leaked a memo to a friend with the intention of it being passed along to the New York Times. Former FBI director admitting to leaking information himself to the media. In February of this year alone, the IRS leaked over 400,000 tax returns, which also included Jeff Bezos' tax return and Elon Musk's tax returns. The clerk from the Supreme Court leaked the Dobbs versus Jackson Women's Health Organization draft opinion in 2022. And if I were to go back to just the year 2000 on U.S. government leaks that we know of to media institutions, we would be here until Christmas Day. And those are just the ones that we know of. And we usually only find out about these, I would say, maybe like 10 to 15% of the time of the ones that actually get leaked and are used for political purposes that nobody ends up finding out about. We can also revert to just how awful leaking is in general. Where back in 2019, Congresswoman Katie Hill was sexually exploited by a British tabloid after posting leaked naked photos of her online. Photos that her ex-husband gave to the outlet in a revenge porn plot during their divorce. The Democratic Congresswoman resigned after her own supervisor, Nancy Pelosi, encouraged her to do so. These leaks, they all have different levels to them. In Sheril's case, it's coming from a government agency, which is terrifying because our government has all of our information. And also when people seem to just get picked off individually, like Katie Hill, with leaks, and then have absolutely zero support from anyone, including from their own leaders, from their own parties, it is not good. It's not a good path we're going down. I don't know when this stops either. It's awful, and it's going to get people killed if it hasn't already. Because from this year alone, the British military, they say this was an accident, but you can't say for sure, especially considering the dramatic rise in Middle Eastern migration into the UK and posing a Middle Eastern influence heavily in the UK now. The UK leaked a spreadsheet with the names of thousands of Afghans who had helped British forces in the Middle East. In July 2025, a UK defense secretary said he was, quote, unable to say for sure whether anyone had been killed as a result of the leak, though at least 200 former Afghan troops who helped the British have been killed since the list was revealed. Now, how these leaks work post-leak, right now, Chitterelli's campaign is probably in the process of deciphering the information they have received and comparing it to Sheril's own statements to find inconsistencies, and then obviously use them against her. And they'll probably leak this information that they received in a leak to media outlets to post. They're not going to post it on their own Twitter accounts. They're going to then sell it to their own friends in the media who are then going to use it in the form of content. And then Chitterelli's campaign is then going to repost that content as if it was that media outlet who developed that information themselves. There's obviously a weaponization of these offices, and that has been 4 years now. And the only times you hear people complain about it, though, is when the shoe is on the other foot.